Good evening. So we carry on with our explanation for chapter 1, and we have reached the planning factors. When we plan any railway project, we need to consider a number of factors. And in this section, we'll be talking about these factors in detail. Also, we'll be talking about demand-based railway planning. So without further ado, let's start. So this is the factors that you would be considering when you plan any railway project. And just to explain, I got these notes from Nigel Harris, and he had a presentation called How to Make Money with Railways. So the first factor that we'll be looking at, environment and demography, the number of people, the information about the people, information about our future travelers. Also, we'll be looking at impact of physical geography. We'll be looking at technological factors, what kind of technology we should choose, what kind of transport solution is the best solution for us. And in this case, we are focusing on railways. Also, we'll be looking at investment factors, how we are going to get the money, how we are going to get the finance, what kind of factors does an investor look at, and how we can include this in our planning. We look at management factors, how this operation will be run to achieve its objective, and regulatory factors, what kind of regulations control us. So if we look at environment and demography, one of the things that we'll always look at is the population size. How many people are living in that city, in that village, in that destination, and what is their density, and what is the size of that city, how big is that city, and how we can utilize for example, a very dense city might find the metro system is much more suitable than, for example, choosing a car. While if you have a very suburban area where you have detached houses with some distance between each other, maybe you would choose something like a road and a car. Also, we'll be looking at the population income. What kind of income does this population have? And we'll be looking at car ownership. What is the percentage of people that are using car or owning a car? We'll be looking at their trip patterns. How do they travel on a daily basis? So this is the first factor that we'll be looking at. The second factor that we'll be looking at is impact of physical geography. What are the construction costs? How we can dig a tunnel? How we can build a bridge? Is it easy to excavate within this area? Is it easy to transport your equipments to that area? So we'll be looking at the construction and operating costs, but also we'll be looking at the population distribution, how these distribution as part of the physical geography, how the population is distributed. Is there a heavy industry? Is there a mining industry? Is there an industrial complex that needs to transport their goods on a continuous basis? Also, we'll be looking at the quality of the modal alternative, the trucks, for example. Are trucks being used? Is it a suitable, are being used? Is it a suitable solution? And we'll be looking at existence of transit traffic. How does this traffic happens, transit traffic that is passing through this area work, and how it can affect our plan. We'll be looking also at technological factors. What is the cost of the technology that we want to choose? What kind of technology? How open are we to new technology, and how safe are they, and how reliable and robust? So we need to weigh different factors, and to be fair, this thing should be studied in details as the technology continues to develop. You would be really keen on having the best technology, but that is reliable and can stay for the long term. We'll be also looking at investment factors. We need to look at sufficient finance to invest. Do we have sufficient finance to invest? Can we finance the project for its whole life cycle? Do we have the money to renew our assets to achieve a certain performance or to enhance our performance? What are the legal requirements that control such an investment? What are the costs of maintenance? What are our golden assets, and how we can maintain them and how we can utilize them? So this is a very comprehensive set of points that you need to be looking at, which comes as part of investment factors. Also, you need to be looking at investment as a system, and that system is very simple. You put money and you get profit. But this is the very high level system. You would have many subsystems within that, and those subsystems would affect your profit. So is transporting more people affect my profit, or is transporting less people affect my profit? So we'll be looking at this in more details in the coming slides. We'll be also looking at management factors. Do we have a clear vision where we do want to take the transport in that area? Where do we want to take our railway company? Do we have a sound strategy to achieve our vision? Do we have the power to execute our objectives? And do we have the effective means for implementation? We'll be looking at regulatory factors, the minimum fare regulation, the minimum labor regulation, the appropriate safety regulation, the appropriate service level regulation, the appropriate financial regulation, different kind of regulations. What is the minimum wage? What kind of protections I need to provide for my laborers? What kind of safety regulations are there? Also, is this an area where it encourages investment? Or do we have the financial support to offset our do we have also financial support or subsidies or support from the government to offset some of our regulatory costs? So that was the planning factors that we need to consider. But what we are planning for, success, but what is success? So to understand success, we need to look at the railway as a business, and we look at the cost. And there are different types of cost. So the black line here is the fixed cost. So it stay constant across the whole, regardless whether you increase the transport units, the fixed cost, you will pay that all the time. Then there is the variable cost, where if you add the transport units, if you transport more, you have to pay more, like fuel, like consumption, like electricity, and any other variable cost that is associated with the production. Then there is the complexity cost, which is as you increase your transport units, as you increase the size of your organization, as you increase the size of your reach, there is a cost of complexity, the complexity of the interfaces that you have, the complexity of the added systems you have. So if you add the three costs together, you will be ending with this graph, and this is the complexity cost. So now you need to try to think about my revenue. How does the revenue graph look like? So the revenue graph looks, it increased dramatically with the first increase of passenger kilometers, then it almost smooth up. So there is a certain level that you really need to achieve, and you can go more, but you need to understand that going more might not affect my profit as I'm expecting. Because this is the graph, the curve underneath that is the complexity cost, and the difference between these two is the profit, which is reflected in this graph. So this is the difference between this graph and this graph. So at the beginning, you would have lower profit, then you see that your maximum profit, and while you increase your passenger kilometer or ton kilometer, it will start to decrease. So you would try to plan something in this area, or why this area and not the peak? If you design something for the peak, it might not be sustainable. If it was used by so many people and it has that much audience and that much service, it can be sustainable for the long term. It's a management decision on which point we are trying to target, but you would eventually try to have sustainable long-term profits. Now, I'll be talking about demand-based railway planning, and please have a look at how we plan for demand, how we understand the demand. And we look at my interview with Mr. Osama Ikiji, where he talks about his planning experience in a much more detail. So there is gathering information and analysis, there is modeling. So for demand-based planning, you would be gather information sometimes through surveys. Of course, there are many other tools like cameras and sometimes like maybe websites or other tools. But you need a way to collect information. For their surveys, you need to ask people where people want to go, and are they going for business, commercial, educational, or leisure purposes, and when people want to go. Are they going to go on an hourly basis? Do they want the service to be, do they want to travel on an hourly, twice every day, or weekly, once on the weekend, or only once every year? So they have that element where they should be thinking about. Also, you should be thinking about modeling. Modeling, you need to model your demand. You need to think about generalized cost function. What kind of transport mode would people take as an alternative? And you should be thinking about network modeling of existing services, how the new service or the new planned service would affect our railway, and how it will affect our demand. Also, you'd be looking at modeling inside stations. You usually, new stations and services, you would try to model the passengers. I'm not much familiar with trip end modeling or graving modeling, but usually they use a computer-aided software like Legion or Vism to try to model the change that is expected with a expected planning arrangement, or with the expected new service. That is being said, I think this will be the end of our section. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you in the next section. We'll be talking about operational based planning. Have a great evening.